Tell me about the role of a career coach and how you can help people in that situation.
I think if you look at the almost the origination of the outplace and marketplace, some of that was born out of City of London, where individuals were made redundant from banks, and every morning they get up at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. and put their sandwiches in their briefcase and get on a train, and then wander around Piccadilly Circus for 8 hours, and then get back on a train and go home, and say evening dear in the Cosmopolitan House in Woking, and it was a little bit like Reggie Perrin. It was a slightly surreal experience. So outplacement was almost born to try and support people into making those decisions. What is fascinating about the whole of that marketplace is that a lot of the decisions appear to be made or generated around psychometric tests. And I became more interested in the coaching scene probably about 7 years ago, when a chap walked in off the street who had spent £4,000 or £5,000 with one of the premium career management businesses in the UK, and had been with them for 6 months, and he'd done 5 or 6 psychometric tests, and they told him he'd be a really great engineer, which was good because for 35 years he'd been a great engineer. So it wasn't that he'd been a chef, or they didn't tell him to go and be a painter and decorator, so they told him to be what he'd been before. What they hadn't done was actually review his CV, or looked at career routes, or looked at how to get the guy re-employed. And actually, 7 years on, he's still not employed. He's undertaken some consultancy work, he's undertaken some non-executive work, but he's still not back in a full-time job. And to an extent, I blame that first 7 months with this third-party career management company, because they just told him what he already knew. There aren't many people that you're going to find that were heads of engineering that suddenly become a ballerina, for God's sake. But this poor guy seemed to think that spending money and ticking boxes was going to make some disproportionate change in his life, and that wasn't the case. And I fear that with transforming one's life or transforming careers is about you finding what you want to do. Again, it's not about somebody dictating what you want to do. If you've worked in the armed forces and you've been in REME, you're not going to be an engineer. You're not going to be aligned to something engineering orientated. And that's whether you're in Colchester, with one of the squadrons there, or whether you're with the 2 SAS groups in Hereford. You are going to have some orientation towards that engineering sector. If you are playing professional football, or if you are 19 and you've been told you're going to be the next Paul Gascoigne or the next Cristiano Ronaldo, and somebody turns to you at 19 and says, you're really skillful, but you haven't got it. It's invariably the case that you'll do something based on sport in some way or another. And suddenly turn to somebody who probably has ignored their education because of their sporting prowess, and say to them, we think you should be doing this, or we think you should be doing that, is just fundamentally wrong. You can migrate somebody over time into that sort of role, but it's like the chief executive who suddenly gets told that they should go and be a marketing manager. That may be great. That may be great for 3 or 4 or 5 months if the individual's unemployed. But you're going into it as the employer knowing if they were a great chief executive, if they were a successful chief executive, they're not going to be doing that job in 12 months or 2 years, because they're going to go back to it again. The story that always comes to mind when we talk about career transition is recruiting people into the banking recruitment sector, where individuals will come to you and say, I was a foreign exchange trader, and I was a really great foreign exchange trader, and I want to do recruitment. So you end up saying to them, that's really good. So where have you got your yacht moored? Is it in Monaco, or You know, is it in Marbella or is it in Benalmádena? Where is it? And they kind of don't know what you're saying. And actually what you're saying is, if you were a great foreign exchange trader, you wouldn't want to be a recruiter. So let's be realistic about what you're looking to do. And let's make sure the advice is real-time, real-world advice and realistic advice when you're transforming people's careers and lives. There's an awful lot written in the press about professional sports at the moment, and there's an awful lot of professional sportsmen, ex-professional sportsmen that are taking to LinkedIn to look at opportunities for them beyond their sporting career. And there's some fairly high-profile individuals that I talk to who, even with advice, seem to hang their flag out saying, please, please, please help me, or please, please, please give me something to do. And actually what they probably need to do is sit down and have a plan put together that stops them from hanging the flag out saying, please, please, please help me. Because it's not the place. It's just not the place to do it. You know, it smacks of desperation. You know, they're probably undermining their real value because people would take advantage of the "please, please, please help me" scenario. And I think that probably applies. Well, it does apply across the entirety of a certain level of marketplace. Invariably, where people are being almost born into a certain career early on in their life. So professional sports, individuals that come out of the legal sector after a significant amount of time, armed forces after a significant amount of time, almost where it's institutionalised. Because if you think about sports and the armed forces, everything other than the task is almost done for you, is arranged for you. So if you're a pro sportsman, you turn up, the training's set up, the food is set up, you even at the tier 8 of football, you know, your breakfast is there for you, your coach is there for you, your training facilities are set up for you, your lunch is arranged for you, your coach is arranged for you, your lunch on the coach is arranged for you to games, everything is done for you, and then suddenly it stops. So hold on a moment, who's going to cook my breakfast, or who's going to arrange my breakfast? Who's arranging my lunch? You know, and that takes a lot to get over. You know, getting on the train at 7 o'clock, going into the city, wandering around the city, getting back on the train and going home again, and not telling your loved one that you were made redundant 6 months ago, is almost replicated in that scenario. The probably difference is that the ex-professional sportsman probably spends time in the betting shop or online. You know, the ex-member of the armed forces that has seen grotesque things throughout their career, you know, will be suffering from some form of PTSD because of it without the relevant support. So there are psychological similarities with every process. But what you need to be doing in transforming that person is taking it right the way back. By starting again, going back to what I was talking about with the CV, what are those key skills? Where are you different? What have you experienced that's different? I saw a webinar this morning with 4 ex-professional footballers talking about people that had influenced them. And they were talking, ironically, about Terry Venables and how Terry Venables had influenced the 4 of them. And 2 of the 4 referred to the fact that he brought a business focus as well as, you know, outstanding qualities as a coach. And it gave them the thoughts of what they should be doing beyond football. Now, whether, you know, one can write about Terry Venables every day, but you know, there are 2 things. He did run successful businesses, and he was probably one of the best English coaches that we've had. So, and you know, very influential in his time. So it is that influential bit, and it's breaking it back that's important.